One night an African man called me to his home, and the night had a strange stillness to it, one of those evenings where even the air feels heavier than usual. I remember sitting alone on the edge of my bed, the dim bedside lamp casting a soft gold glow on the wall. My partner was once again late, as always lately, too busy or too tired to notice the emptiness growing between us. I kept telling myself that distance is normal in long relationships, but the truth is, the silence was beginning to feel like a third person living with us. I exhaled slowly, rubbing my temples, trying to ease the unsettled feeling inside me. Sometimes, I'd glance out the window just to prove to myself that the world outside my apartment still existed. That's when I saw him, my neighbor across the hallway, the young African man in his mid-20s. Tall, calm, always gentle with his greetings. He had a way of carrying himself that felt both quiet and confident, a presence that lingered without ever trying to. We had exchanged only brief words since he moved in. A nod in the corridor, a soft good morning, a polite smile. Nothing more. But even from those short moments, there was something disarming about him, something observant in the way he looked at people, like he could see things others overlooked. Tonight, as I sat alone, I found my thoughts drifting toward him for no reason I could explain. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe curiosity. Maybe something I didn't want to name. A sudden knock broke the silence, not loud. Not hurried. Just one gentle tap. I froze, heart pounding. It was too late for visitors. For a moment, I wondered if it was my partner, but no, he never knocked. He always came in like someone who no longer feared being unwelcome. The knock came again, this time followed by a soft voice. "Can I talk to you?" Just for a moment. I recognized the voice instantly. His voice. Calm, deep, almost careful. I opened the door slightly, and there he stood in the warm light of the hallway. His expression wasn't urgent, but sincere. His eyes met mine in a way that made my heart flutter and confuse me all at once. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I noticed you looked upset earlier. I didn't want to bother you, but I thought maybe you needed someone to talk to." I swallowed hard. No one had asked me that in months. "Oh," I replied, embarrassed at how vulnerable my voice sounded. "I'm okay. Just tired." He hesitated, then stepped a little to the side, gesturing gently toward his door across the hall. "If you want," he said, "you can come over for a moment. You don't have to be alone tonight." My breath caught. A simple invitation. Harmless. Maybe, yet the way he said it, the way his eyes lingered quietly on mine, something inside me stirred, something I wasn't ready to face. Still, before I had time to think it through, I found myself stepping out into the hallway. He opened his door wider, waiting, almost expectant. I stood at the threshold, heart racing, knowing this moment could change everything. "If you want part 2, 500 words, just say it." Part 2. Inside his home, the moment I stepped inside his apartment, the air felt warmer, different from the cool emptiness of my own home. A soft amber light glowed from a single lamp in the corner, casting long shadows across the walls. The place was quiet, uncluttered, and surprisingly calming, as if someone had intentionally created a space where worries dissolved at the door. He closed the door gently behind us, not with force, not with urgency, just quietly, respectfully. I stood near the entrance for a moment, unsure of what to do with my hands, my thoughts, or the sudden nervous fluttering in my chest. "Make yourself comfortable," he said softly. His voice had a grounding warmth to it, like a hand resting gently on the heart. I nodded and took a hesitant seat on the edge of his couch. He walked toward the kitchenette, moving with an unhurried steadiness, and poured 2 cups of tea. I watched him in silence, noticing details I had never noticed before, the careful way he handled things, the gentleness in his movements, the slight concentration in his eyes when he poured the water. He wasn't like most men I knew. There was no rush, no show, no arrogance. Just presence. He handed me the cup and sat beside me, and not too close, not too far. Just close enough that I could feel the quiet warmth between us. "I'm sorry if I scared you," he said, keeping his eyes on the steam rising from his tea. "You just seemed sad tonight." His words caught me off guard. People usually noticed when I smiled. They ignored when I didn't know. I replied softly. "You didn't scare me. I just wasn't expecting anyone to notice." He turned his head slightly, just enough for me to feel the weight of his attention. "I notice more than people think," he said. "And I noticed you haven't looked happy in a while." I stared at the tea, my throat tightening. I didn't know what to say to that, not without revealing pieces of myself I had kept hidden for too long. He didn't push. Instead, he let the silence sit between us, gentle and patient. And somehow, that made it worse. Or better. I couldn't tell. After a moment, he leaned back against the couch, letting out a slow breath. His arm rested along the backrest, not touching me but creating a subtle frame around where I sat. "Today I'm here if you ever want to talk," he murmured. Something in his tone made the words feel heavier, deeper. I looked up at him, and for the first time, I truly saw the concern in his eyes, real concern, not the hurried, distracted kind I had become used to at home. My fingers trembled slightly as I set my cup down. He noticed. He didn't say anything, but he shifted a little closer, slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. I didn't. Our hands brushed lightly on the couch cushion. A barely there touch. Accidental, maybe. But the spark that ran through me didn't feel accidental at all. He looked down at our hands, then back at me. "I don't want to cross any lines," he whispered, voice low, steady. "But you're not alone. Not tonight." I should have moved my hand away. I should have stood up instead, my fingers relaxed, resting near his, allowing the moment to breathe. That was the first real boundary I felt myself slipping past. The room felt smaller, warmer, charged with something unspoken, and neither of us tried to stop it. If you want part 3, 500 words, just say it. Part 3. A boundary softly breaks. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the lamp and the soft rhythm of our breathing. His hand rested inches from mine, close enough that the warmth of his skin drifted toward me like a silent invitation. I wasn't sure if he felt it too, but then he shifted, just slightly, and that tiny movement sent another wave of tension through me. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. "I should probably go," I whispered, though my voice held no real conviction. He nodded slowly, not arguing, not trying to stop me. But his eyes held a question. A quiet pull. A softness that made leaving feel impossible. "You can," he replied. "Only if you truly want to." The truth hung between us like heavy smoke. I didn't want to. My gaze dropped to the floor as my emotions twisted, guilt blending with longing, fear mixing with comfort. I had never intended to find warmth in anyone else's presence. I had never planned for my loneliness to become something so complicated. He shifted again, gently turning his body toward me. Not imposing. Not demanding. "Just present. You don't have to talk about it," he said quietly. "But I can see you're hurting." His words cracked something inside me. A simple acknowledgement, something so small, yet I hadn't felt seen in so long. The urge to let myself be vulnerable with someone, even for a moment, felt overwhelming. "I don't know what I'm doing," I admitted, voice trembling. "I just don't feel like myself anymore." His expression softened. Slowly, very slowly, he lifted his hand from the couch and let it hover near mine, giving me every chance to move away. I didn't move. When his fingers finally closed around mine, the touch was barely there, soft, tentative, careful. But the emotional weight of it hit me hard. It wasn't lust. It wasn't impulse. It was connection. My breath caught as he gently intertwined his fingers with mine. The warmth of his hand, the steady grip, the quiet reassurance, it all made my pulse race. "You're safe here," he whispered. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting myself feel it, the comfort, the attention, the gentleness I had forgotten existed. When I opened them again, he had inched closer. Our shoulders brushed lightly, our knees almost touching. The closeness wasn't planned. It wasn't reckless. It was slow, inevitable. He lifted his other hand and, with a hesitation that showed respect more than desire, he brushed a loose strand of hair from my face. It was the softest touch I'd felt in years. Something inside me gave way. I leaned into him, just slightly, just enough to let him know I wasn't pulling back anymore. He exhaled, a quiet sound that felt like relief. His arm slowly curved around my shoulders, drawing me gently toward him. The world outside his apartment faded, replaced by the warmth of his embrace and the steady beating of his heart against my cheek. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't explicit, but it was a betrayal, an emotional one. And I felt it deep in my chest. Then, suddenly, a noise echoed from the hallway. A door closing. Voices passing by. Reality striking hard. I pulled back quickly, breath unsteady, guilt flashing across my face. He didn't stop me. He just looked at me with concern, understanding the conflict in my eyes. The moment had broken, but the feelings remained. If you want part 4, 500 words, the final emotional aftermath and cliffhanger, just say to part 4. I could still feel the imprint of his hand in mine, the warmth of his chest against my cheek, the way his voice softened when he spoke to me. None of it had crossed the line physically, but inside me, something had shifted, something important. I entered my apartment to darkness. My partner still wasn't home. No message. No call. Just silence, wrapping itself around me like a familiar but unwelcome cloak. I leaned against the door, closing my eyes. The contrast between the two spaces hit me harder than I expected. His home had felt warm, present, alive. Mine felt cold, forgettable, quiet in all the wrong ways. I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands as guilt pressed against my chest. It wasn't what happened, it was what almost happened. The feelings I hadn't stopped. The boundaries I had let blur. Hours seemed to pass before I finally drifted into a restless sleep. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds, too bright for the weight in my heart. My partner was already awake, casually scrolling through his phone as if nothing at all had changed in the last 24 hours. Morning, he said without looking up. I murmured a response, my voice barely audible. He didn't notice, but someone else did. When I walked to the door to get the mail, a small piece of paper slid out from underneath. A folded note. Simple, unassuming. My heart thudded when I opened it. You don't have to pretend you're okay. If you need someone. I'm here. No signature, just his handwriting. I stared at the message, fingers trembling, breath caught somewhere between fear and longing, because the truth was, last night hadn't ended anything. It had only begun something I wasn't sure I could walk away from. As I held the note close, one question echoed louder than all my guilt. Should I go back tonight? If you want, I can now create. White heavy checkmark title, white heavy checkmark description, white heavy checkmark hashtags, white heavy checkmark visual prompts for all. For parts just tell me, give title and description or give visual prompts.